Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 204. Today, Bob Andersen, Hilary Saxton, unpacking the top 10 team members, there's a mouthful for you, that you need to make sure that you have a smooth running property development. Let's jump on into episode 204. Hello, welcome to episode 204. I'm Hilary Saxton and this is Bob Andersen. Hey, Bob.
G'day, Hilary. I'm a little bit croaky today.
Yeah, I know you are. There's a lot going on with your throat there. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, we'll see. Do you think you can smash out a podcast?
I'll do my best. Let's see how we go.
You sound like a bit of a foreigner. Everybody, this is Bob Andersen. This isn't an AI simulated voice. No, he's good. Good to go. Any tips, Bob?
I think a good one at the moment, particularly with my voice. Winter is coming, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow.
Stay warm, because sometimes I don't.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I don't know. What is it with you and thinking it's always warm?
I don't know. Queenslander.
Queenslander.
But anyway, yeah, just keep warm.
Okay, so Bob, today we've decided to unpack before we do, let's give away the book. The book this week goes to Maggie Vu. Maggie, books in the post. Great connecting with you this week. Congrats for joining our mentoring program, and this is in the post to you. Look forward to helping you be hugely successful and make an awful lot of money and make all of the dreams come true that you want. Anyway, now we'll get into the podcast, and we'll be having you on here soon as a guest. Alrighty, Bob, let's walk through the top 10 people and some pros and cons on good and bad, and maybe throw in stories that are great learning examples for people. But if we start with, I wrote this one.
Okay.
I couldn't help myself.
Do it.
You have to have a good mentor. And I'll add to that. This week I had a call from a guy and from another country. Hello, Ashley. He tells me he listens to the podcast. Anyway, he wanted a hand developing property in another country. And we are a good mentor because I said, that's not in our wheelhouse. That's not something that we do. It's not that we can't do it. And we could do it in New Zealand. That would be okay. But if we were to step outside into other countries, it's just a different ball game. So I said, we're not for you. But if I think of somebody, I'll let you know. I also said, I gave him a copy of something that people paid for, but because I'm just good like that, I said he could have access to something that he needed to watch and just some stuff he could probably do to make sure he just doesn't jump into bed with the wrong person, if you know what I mean, because he knew that we did mentoring and he was asking if we would, and I said no. So a good property mentor is also somebody that would say, yes, we'll help you, or no, we won't. And I'm going to shamelessly say that's where we do it well, because we only take on 20 people a year. And so that means that the people in our program get specific one-on-one hand-holding, as much communication as they want and need. And, I had a message, I get text messages and emails and all sorts of things where we get people to where they need to go in the fastest way possible. And so I think a good mentor is somebody that knows they can help you and they know when to say no. What would you add to that, Bob?
That's definitely true. And the advantage of not working with too many people is we can customise it to suit the individual, because not everybody's the same. People have different amounts of money. They have different availability of time. Some are single, some are married with too many kids, So being able to match it to the individual, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah, bespoke. I always say it's very bespoke. And that's just the way we choose to do it. But we believe that everybody really should have a mentor, whether it's I do also believe in a paid mentor. For the reasons I say that is, and whether you choose that's us or somebody else, a friend or someone who wants to help you does not know what you don't know. Also, how much experience do you have and what do you not quite know? And I spoke with somebody last week and she was saying, I've got a really good friend and they taught me that, they helped me. And I'm thinking, they don't know actually what you don't know. And we can assume somebody knows something, and do they? And there's all of that stuff, isn't there?
Certainly are. I've seen a lot of casualties over the years.
Yeah, too many. The next one I've got on the list. So number 1, property mentor. Number 2, a really good accountant. And what's your experience with let's go with good accounting and then bad accounting? What can happen?
when you're talking property development, one of the first things you need to do is to get a really good tax effective structure for the project. And it's not something you can grab off the shelf, because they're different horses for courses, really, with structures. Is it a project with an individual? What sort of structure you're going to use? You're going to use a company, you're going to use a trust with a corporate trustee, you're going to hold property, not hold property. So you can't just take it off the shelf. So what you need is an accountant who is very familiar with tax effective business structures that relate to property. And so there's levels of accountants. Here we go. Listen to my voice. There's levels of accountants, right? So you wouldn't go to, say, the accountant who's set up a kiosk at Westfield to do, I don't know, $99 tax returns. Wrong accountant. And even in the property sector, I've seen accountants that still give not correct advice. So choosing the right one. I saw a structure once with somebody who went to buy a fairly expensive property. Their accountant said, okay, we'll do it in a company, set up a company. And the thing is, it was going to get smashed on land tax. Now, land tax is different in every state, and this is not tax advice, but at the time, what you could do is put it into a couple of separate entities and reduce the land tax back to zero, because there's normally a threshold on land tax. And so say it was, I'll make this up, say the threshold was 400,000 above which you pay land tax, and you were buying a property for 1.6 million. The land tax could be quite substantial, but what if you had 4 related entities, each with $400,000 interest in it and pay no land tax? Yeah, for 1 or 2 years, you'd have to do a couple of extra tax returns, but you could be saving a lot of money. You can't do that in every state, and I'm not even saying you can do it now, but I can remember straight away, I thought, well, why hasn't that accountant thought of that angle?
Mm.
And so, yeah, there's different levels of accountants as well. And look, you might have one particular accountant that you use for your tax structures, and you might have someone totally different who does your tax returns, as we do ourselves.
Interesting. I remember that story because you explained how that worked for me, and I was like, wow, what a thing to know. But even just me this year doing with my accountant, who's a property accountant, but he didn't set up my structures, and he said to me, Hilary, you are so well set up. He just said, that's great. You can loan against that. You can loan this, this becomes tax deductible. He just said, wow, well done. I was like, yeah, well done to the guy we use. He does such a good job. So I can definitely agree with that, and probably nowhere near to the level that your 40 years of experience can definitely, I don't know, confirm how good a really good accountant is. So, Bob, the next one is the broker. And I know we often talk about, the odd story with a broker, but you've got so many, and I now know so many and have experienced enough myself. What are the benefits of a good broker, and what actually does a broker do that other people can't do, or what can a good broker do?
So we're talking about a finance broker here. And look, with property development, unless you've got a wheelbarrow full of cash, you're going to have to borrow. And so it's critical to get the money. Mm. You could have a great project, done your feasibility, everything's great, looks incredible, but if you can't borrow the money, you're not going to get to do it. And so the idea of a broker is to find you the best finance that suits both you and the project. And that's what a good broker does. And as we talked about in some of our other podcasts, there's different types of finance. So I won't go down that rabbit hole at the moment, but you could be using on part of your project, could be normal retail finance, residential finance, could be commercial, could be non-bank finance, could be low doc, no doc finance, could be verified. So there's so many different types of finance. And so really important that you have a broker who is over all the types of finance, and particularly as it relates to property development. And certainly enough, as you said, I've seen some disasters where a normal retail broker, who might be great for getting your finance for your house or for an investment property, dabbles into the commercial world of property development finance with little experience. And I've seen them sink projects. No offence to them, but stay in your lane. And so the idea is to get a broker who's, first of all, what we call a commercial broker, but experienced in property development and who really is over the types of finance, the best financiers. There's so many non-bank financiers out there, and they all have different rules. They act quite differently. You couldn't just throw a blanket over them. They're all the same. Quite a lot of variation, and some are more reliable than others. Some are less reliable. I mean, we had that experience not long ago ourselves, where what 3 or 4 days off settling, and a broker changed his mind. Not a broker, a financier changed his mind. So some fast footwork there, and that wasn't the fault of the broker. It's just the financier. It was a financier who normally does construction finance. They said they were okay to do the site acquisition finance, and at the last minute decided they didn't want to do the site acquisition finance, but they're happy to do the construction, but we needed to settle the site. And
they did the old nah.
Yeah, nah. Fortunately, between ourselves and a couple of very close people, we were able to pull the cash in a hurry and settle without a financier. But that's the sort of situation. That's got nothing to do with the broker. All I'm saying there is there's horses for courses with financiers as well, and the broker would generally understand the best financiers for that particular project, perhaps in that particular area, and, well, based on your structure as well, perhaps,
I remember even with that, Bob, with that broker in that situation, he went to somebody. You said, I'd probably go to this person here. And he actually went there, but you'd already spoken to them prior about another matter and could have gone down the road, but you still chose not to go there yourself, or us as our development. This is on the one of the industrial developments that we're doing. It's 24 units, tech shed type units in a block. And you decided not that we would stay going with the broker because the broker can do all the footwork, the fancy footwork, even though it's going to cost, a bit of money. It's not the end of the world to have a broker do it for you, because they do tidy the stuff up. And as you said, stay in your lane. It's really important that the people you work with work in their lane and they do it well.
Yeah, I mean, brokers charge roughly 1% of the loan value, so that's not rocket science. But you're right, that was a funny one where I'd already spoken to one of the financiers that I knew about the project who showed interest in it. And then we went to our close friend, the broker, and I said, look, put this in the mix because I know they're already keen. And they were the actual financier that came to the fore. So the broker didn't introduce us to the financier. We actually introduced the financier to the broker. But, as you say, it's a complex financial structure, that one. There's quite a bit of work for the broker to do to pull that package together. I'm quite happy to pay the brokerage fee to do that and take the heat off us. We're better off doing other things.
I think already that's come out. We're at number 3, and already we've come up with stay in your lane. I think that's important. I think what we're pointing out is you do what you do best and let the other experts do what they do best and have a much better experience. And it does happen at times. You find people always wanting to get the lowest price, and I'll do that myself. And I mean, I'm from New Zealand. We call it a Taranaki gate mentality, and I've been like that a lot of my life. Oh, I can do that, or because we're so used to being from a small country, doing a lot of the stuff you need to yourself. And a Taranaki gate is like a wire gate that farmers used to make. So it is called. That's a thing that's used, but I think that it is important that you realise you'll get price is what you pay and value is what you get, and it really is important to get people who know what they're doing and are really experienced, because it pays off in the long run, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So the next one we've got, Bob, is the town planner. And you're going to say there's different types of town planners. So talk me through first of all, what's the town planner's role for people that are newer to property development? And talk me through, the town planner, the differences, I suppose we'll say, the differences that town planners can have.
Well, town planners have a couple of roles, but in terms of property development, the town planners we're dealing with generally what we want them to help get our development permit. So we've got a site, it stacks up, we've either got it under contract or we may have settled, but we have to get our development approval before we can even go forward. And so they're experts on the planning scheme. So the council's town plan or planning scheme, they're the experts on that. So we would have had a bit to do with them during our due diligence, of course, just to make sure we're on track. So if we think, okay, this is a 4 townhouse site, can we actually do 4 townhouses on that site? So that's one of the questions. Sounds pretty simple. But that's their job, is to work towards getting that development approval. And they may work closely with the architect or whoever else in there, but to get the approval, that's their job. Their job's finished after we get to the development approval. So it's a very specific type job. Like all consultants, that's what we call them, there's levels of experience, levels of knowledge. And so typically, if I was doing a development in a particular council, I'd want a town planner who's done a lot of development applications in that council over a number of years, ideally. Price doesn't vary a lot, I've found, with planners. I mean, a little, not as much as it does with some other consultants. But yeah, just getting somebody experienced in that particular area. That could come from, you could ask other consultants that you meet, who's your favourite town planner. You could sometimes go to council websites and have a look at applications and see who's putting a lot of applications through as well. So, but yeah, that's the town planner's role. So what's the difference between a good and a bad town planner? Well, to me, a good town planner is somebody who's prepared to argue the toss with a council if they really feel they're right. Sometimes councils can be a little bit bullying. Sometimes they might try and push people in a certain direction, even though that's not strictly what the planning scheme says, just to get their way. And I think a town planner needs to be strong enough to do that. To me, a not good town planner, besides their level of knowledge, is one who would capitulate and just go along with council. So I remember I was talking to a town planner once and they said, oh, look, we don't want to rock the boat. We've got to deal with the council, for a long time yet. And so we just don't want to rock the boat. Well, that's okay. But if I got a particular development permit before council, and I think it works, there's every reason why it should go through. If council are a bit obstructionist, I want that town planner to fight it. No, I don't mean fight it later on in court after you get a knockback. I mean take the council officers on, yeah. So there's a balance there, of course. I don't want them to just be overly aggressive and start going in there throwing punches. That could be counterproductive. But be firm and give them good reasoning as to why it should be the way that we want it.
Do you know what? That's the first time I've actually ever thought about it, that a town planner never sees the end result. They take it so far and then their job is done. They must drive around town and go, oh, I was involved in that. Oh, I did that. But do you think they do that?
Oh, they probably would. It'd be on their portfolio. It'd be on their website perhaps. But we always like to throw a party, don't we, at the end of it? And because the town planner is one of our favourite people that we invite to the celebration at the end of a project. So they do, they get to see the end product when they come to one of our parties, but of course not every developer has a party at the end of a project. So
you know what it reminds me of? All the people we've put out as mentoring students and then never say, thanks to Bob Andersen. Like so many people, they've got their own podcasts now.
We should be going to all their parties.
Yeah, or they should be at least saying, Bob got me here. You know who you are. Go on, dare you. What about the next one, Bob, the surveyor?
Yeah, so the surveyor's job initially is to go in and survey the site and then give that digital survey to the architect. Let's say we're building something, townhouse or whatever. So we're going to have someone who's going to design the building. It could be something as simple as a 2-lot subdivision, in which case they just need to do the current survey and then they will do the final survey, of course, when the lot's approved and subdivided. Surveyors, look, you think, well, surveyors are surveyors. What do? They
Doesn't sound all that difficult.
They
Tape measure.
peg bangers. So there's a couple of types of surveyor, really, in a way.
I think we need to say to all the surveyors out there, we shouldn't be so mean. It's a good name though, peg banger. I've never heard it.
Yeah, it's not a derogatory name at all, because I love surveyors, but there are surveyors who just do that. They do the pegging a lot. They do a contour survey, they do a detailed survey, they'll do a reinstatement survey where they put the pegs back in, and that's fine. Then you've got consulting surveyors who are sort of capable of doing all that, but they tend to integrate town, sort of like the town planning part of a subdivision, into their business as well. So on small subdivisions, sometimes you might just have a consulting surveyor who sort of handles the town planning aspect as well as the physical surveying to get it through, because it'd be quite simple. And you can even not necessarily even need a town planner to do something that small and straightforward. A consulting surveyor would be good. But with surveyors, there's, the difference between, in my opinion, the difference between a good surveyor and a not so good surveyor.
What, is this a question? No.
Otherwise, I'll tell you. It's the detail that they put into their survey. I didn't realise that when I first started out. I just look, will you do the survey for this lot? I'm going to do a for townhouse project. And so you get a fee proposal. And say this guy's $2,000. This other one's $1,800. You think, oh, well, they all do the same job. I'll do the $1,800. But a lot of it is the detail. So they actually need a good brief, because what I found very early in the piece is that a good surveyor puts in a lot of detail. They'll even go outside of the lot and pick up a lot of things outside the lot in neighbours' properties and so forth. Whereas a not so good surveyor will have less detail. They'll spend less time on site. It'll still be a survey. And so and this happened to me very early in the piece, is I'd had a look. I thought, well, a survey's a survey. And I went with the cheapest survey. And then what happened in the next stage, where we started to do the design, the architect's doing the design, there wasn't enough detailed information in it. So he'd say, oh, look, can you send the surveyor out and I'll make it up, and just survey that house next door, because there's nothing in there. It's exactly how far it is from the boundary and how high it is above the ground. You're just making that up. Oh, okay. Now I've got to send the surveyor out again. Well, the $1,800 survey versus the $2,000 survey, it has to go out once and maybe even twice. Next thing, the $1,800 becomes a $2,500 because he had to go out another once or twice and do stuff. Whereas the $2,000 guy had it all in there anyway. And so I quickly learned detail's important. And then I learned how to put a brief together so that they picked it all up.
That's interesting stuff, Bob. That more about, you want more detail, and I think that with property development anyway, it is very detailed, because there's so many moving parts, and you can't expect that everything has to be ticked off. That's why we've got the checklists, the flow charts and checklists, because you need to be able to check off that you're doing everything. But that would be having those good consultants to do those things. Yeah, that would be very important. I could see that. Okay, the next one we've got is the architect and building designer. Architect and or building designer.
Yeah, so what's the difference between the two?
I know. It's the level of qualification. But because the architect has a higher level of qualification, so will definitely charge more often than not. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go with that. And the building designer has a lesser level of education. Doesn't always mean, though, and I've heard you say that the building designer isn't always as good as the architect. And sometimes an architect can over-architect something. So if you want to build something for a space, as in property development and the infill type stuff that our students are more likely to do, or everyday sort of people are likely to do, we don't always want to over-architecturalize it, make it too outrageous, because that becomes too cost ineffective. Have I nailed that one?
Yeah, you have nailed it, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
So an architect, I think, goes to uni for about 5 years, and then they do another year to become registered on the Architectural Institute of Australia or something anyway, whatever it is. And so 5 or 6 years at uni. building designer, not sure. I think
can I say it? Goes to knowledge schools and does a weekend course. No.
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 I'm not.
No,
Look,
those buyer's agents. Oh, cheekies. I'm only joking.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm not sure. Perhaps they can do it through taste. I'm not sure if it's a Cert 4 or if it's beyond that or whether they do uni, but less qualifications. And that's fine if you're going to do a 10-story building. So you wouldn't normally go to a building designer to design a 10-story building, but an architect's well and truly capable of that. But I suppose you've got to look at, well, what am I designing? Am I doing a 2-lot subdivision? I'm going to build a house. Is it a house? Is it a duplex? Is it 3 or 4 townhouses? And certainly there's good building designers around that are quite capable of doing that. So the thing is, and you mentioned it, is some architects, and there's only some, these are the ones you don't use, are too flamboyant, and they design things that might look incredible but are very expensive to build. And it doesn't mean you're going to get the money back at the other end. By the same token, if somebody designs something that's really boring and box-like, then you probably won't get your money back at the other end. So it's a bit, you need a building designer's normally quite pragmatic, understands buildability and cost, but they need a certain flair to make it look good. And an architect understands all of that, but in some cases, you may need to tone them down a little bit. The perfect architect, of course, is one who's had a lot of experience designing for developers. So they really understand the importance of good design, good functional design, has to look good, but not cost a fortune to build.
And I'm thinking what could probably go with that. The brief that you give them could make all the difference as well. Devil in the detail yet again. Bob, the next one being the engineer. So civil and structural. These are all part of the top 10 team. Break those down.
Yeah, so depending on what we're doing, if it was just a little subdivision, it'd be a civil engineer who would design the services and the connections and so forth. Probably the only engineer involved. Nothing structural there, unless you may be putting a driveway with a crossover. Yeah, a little bit of structural there, but not much. Building something, obviously, houses, townhouses, duplexes, then you're a structural engineer. So they'll design the footings, the slab, the frame, the tie downs, the bracing, perhaps any beams and steel work, and even the driveway for that matter, and concrete, depth reinforcing. So quite a bit of a job for a structural engineer. Civil engineer on something like duplex is pretty simple. It's more to do with just the service connections, stormwater, sewer water, and hydraulic engineer. Hydraulic engineer, mainly when we're probably getting up into townhouses, and they design all the internal plumbing works, the roof water, the gutters, the downpipes, how it connects into the services internally, all the runs, floor waste, everything like that, in a more complex building, say from townhouses upwards. Generally, you wouldn't need a hydraulic engineer or hydraulic designer or something as simple as a duplex. The builder's plumber drainer is probably just going to carry that design out. But yeah, so either 2 or 3 engineers. You get more complex once you get into bigger buildings, geotechnical engineers, environmental engineers, and there's an engineer for everything.
There is an engineer for everything. I'm going to stop with the engineers, Bob. What about then we're up to the builder. We all know what the builder does. He builds it. But why is it? Well, we already know why, and we've talked about builders so often, but it is so important to get the right builder. It's not always the cheapest. It's not always the most expensive, and it's not always the one in the middle. It's the one that comes with great references. It's the one that you've really done your due diligence on. It's the one that you can communicate with. It's the one that gets back to you. It's the one that you connect with, because crikey, when you have trouble with your builder, it is just, from what I've heard, a nightmare, isn't it?
Well, it can be. Thinking of a few people, and even myself, not too often, thank goodness, but I've had a couple. I had a builder who went broke on me once. And he started off well. It was 22 townhouses, so it's a decent-sized project, and it took a while to build, obviously. But he got harder and harder to deal with, obviously, as the financial pressures really mounted on him. And it wasn't that project that sent him. He was involved in 2 other projects he'd badly quoted. And those other two not good projects ended up bringing the whole 3 down, and he went broke on me. I got through that okay, but that relationship sort of deteriorated because as his finances really tightened up, he tried to grab money wherever he could. So he's trying to grab variations and stuff everywhere, and it just became a bit of a nightmare there, you know. So yeah, I mean, communication's a huge thing. Even when you're putting your tenders out for a builder, really important, that communication. That'll say a lot about the builder, how you communicate, how that builder communicates, just from the first time you make contact with them to even see if they'd like to tender on your job and what it's like, and on the way through when they've got questions. That'll tell you a lot. So communication's big, but you know the old saying, you know.
Yeah, we say that we don't always get it right when we say it. So let's see if we can get it right. So you can either have, a builder will say you can either have it fast, cheap, or with high quality.
Yeah.
So, but what does he say?
All 3. Which 2 do you want?
Yeah, which 2 do you want? And if you had to choose the 2, would it be quality and cheap? Like, which one would you dip out on?
Well, you've got to choose a build. It is possible for builders to do all 3 within reason. I mean, quality is important, but particularly if you're building something a bit up spec, up market. So quality is important. Quality would probably rank over speed at that point. So, you know, neatness, quality, you know, but get all 3.
If you can.
Yeah, and you can.
And then we've got the solicitor or / conveyancer. We've been always very lucky, well, I feel, with solicitors. Since I've joined with you, your solicitors have always been awesome. We go to their social functions and stand in their big high buildings and watch them. You know, we've been really lucky. But not just that, you've had the relationships with your solicitor for over 40 years, one of them, and you've just one in more recent times, just so well connected, and we're incredibly lucky, I feel. Even, you know, at the moment with this stuff we've got going on right now, you know, we've got a different lawyer putting together, sort of settling on. She's a conveyancer, but she's doing some lawyer work in there as well. And, you know, I think we're quite lucky. Well, that's that thing, I suppose. Price is what you pay, value is what you get, and the relationship we have with all of them is very good.
Yeah, it is. Probably a bit more than luck, but because there's horses for courses. Everybody knows, well, they should know, we need a property lawyer. The lawyer has a few roles. We might first come across the lawyer, well, even when we're setting our structure up, right? So we need a really good accountant to tell us what the correct structure should be. But often the lawyer might, for instance, write the trust deed if we're having a trust. So the lawyer could have some involvement there. If we're putting together, let's say, a joint venture agreement on our project, well, we need a lawyer there as well. The conveyancing for the settlement of the site, lawyers back again. When we're getting our finance and we have to get the documents perused by law, lawyers back again to explain the loan conditions to us. And at the other end, when we're settling our sales, lawyers back again. So looks like there's about 5 touches there just with lawyers potentially. So they are an important component. And typically property lawyers are the ones we deal with, but we may need a specialist lawyer even somewhere. For instance, there's contract lawyers who just specialise in contracts. And there's some lawyers who just specialise purely in construction contracts, not just any contract, but construction contracts.
How boring would their job be?
I know, ask Jess, she doesn't seem to mind.
Oh, yeah, she does a good job.
So that would be if you had some sort of serious issues with a builder in the contract stage, you may need to get specialist advice, for instance, from that particular lawyer.
I suppose when you were saying that, I was thinking more of just drawing up the contract. But yeah, I get what you mean. When every time you
construction contract,
you work with Jess more when you need to sort things out.
Yeah,
and then
or you might even have a divorce on the way through a project. You have to get family lawyer involved. You know,
family property lawyer. Yeah. Okay, the last one, Bob, is the real estate agent, and I remember that great interview we did with the lady in Brisbane.
Tony Crichton's Fort Townhouse project.
Yeah, she taught me a lot about real estate agents, even though I've got lots of good friends. Shout out to Linda Greenslade in NZ. Shout out to Chris McCartney in New Zealand.
Terry Ann.
Terry Ann Murray. Big shout out to Terry Ann Murray here in the Sunshine Coast, who I think it's interesting because we've had things go to market and stuff, and even we've had the meeting already with the agents for the industrial units, and we haven't even done anything yet. That we haven't started construction, but the marketing for those is already underway. So using really good agents, and you know what I liked about those guys, with the industrial stuff we've got going on, but 2 different companies came together to give us our best result. So they weren't like, well, we want to sell these, we want to sell these. They have, haven't they? There's 2 different companies talking about, well, we'll work together because I think we can do some work here and I think we can do some work here, which I thought was, it's pretty credible.
Yeah. We were actually instrumental in bringing those 2 companies together, but they have worked together previously, which was a good thing. So one of those specialises in selling to owner-occupiers, and the other company specialises in leasing them up for investors, for instance. And so they're both very strong in that individual field. So bring the 2 together. And they get on really well, those guys. As we know, we had that board meeting with the 2 companies and ourselves, and that's a great way so that we can cover both of those bases, have 2 agents, and get great results. And they're more than happy to work together.
It's all about the good result. Funny story for me though, because I sit there, I'm the only female in the room, and there's about 8 males who are sitting around this big board table. And I feel like they're looking at me thinking, "Are you going to make the coffee?" That's what I feel like. They don't, but I wonder if they think that. Bob always has to sort of be. He always goes, "So Hilary's like part of the team here," like just to reassure, because when I'm the only female in a room of all males, it does feel a little bit like people think, okay, I'll no milk, I'll just take mine with sugar, thanks, or something. I do feel like that at times.
Testosterone in the room.
I know. I don't think they mean it. I just think they.
But I think once they realised that your role in this was critical, because you bring the whole financial thing together, you bring the investors together, help. We work together on creating an information memorandum. You make all that happen. At the moment, in one of those projects, you're pulling the investors together on the finance package, which is quite complex as well. So I think once those guys understand what you really do, they think, "Oh, crap, I can't do that."
Well, while we're on that, so we are putting together a new pack right now, and I've had a few people reach out because of the podcast. So if you're interested in learning about maybe investing in our next project, I will know in the next 2 days whether it's going ahead. So if you're keen to be an investor, reach out for me. Of course, it just doesn't mean send me an email. I'm keen. It starts with a conversation, so I need your phone number and have a chat with you. But we will know by Friday, I think, Thursday or Friday, whether the next project we have going ahead is going ahead. And if that's the case, you might be one of the lucky investors, because we've got some pretty cool things going on. So feel free to reach out. There'll be a link below in this email. And if there's not, you can just send an email to admin@propertymastermind.com.au and I'll generally find it, or someone will let me know. So Bob, anyway, thank you. That's the top 10 people you need in your development team. I'll run through them. A really good mentor, somebody who's going to support you on the journey and make sure that you stay on track, that you don't lose momentum, that you avoid terrible mistakes and risky costs, and somebody who just really holds your hand and looks after you. The accountant, vital for your structure setup. That is so vital. Your finance broker, a good one, makes such a difference. So they'll find the right type of structure for you and make sure you get a really good deal. Then you've got your town planner, and they navigate everything to do with making sure you can make it happen with the council. So they look after those requirements. We've got the surveyor determining the boundaries and a lot more from what Bob just said. The surveyors, there's quite a bit more to them than we realise. Architect or building designer actually turning your vision into something that you get to see. The engineer, and they are structural and or the engineer, making sure that everything's structural and compliant with building codes. Then we've got the builder, brings the little life. Remember, you need to have good relationship there. You've got your solicitor / conveyancer, manages the contracts. And Bob pointed out at least 5 touch points that you will have with your solicitor, at least with your development. And then a fabulous real estate agent, because without somebody who knows what they're doing, you won't have those sales. They'll negotiate for you and they'll really look after you. So, Bob, that's the top 10 people that you need in property development team.
The top 10.
Top 10. Yep. He's hoping that your voice gets better soon.
It will.
Yep.
Plenty of, I might need some lubricant, do you think, later?
What are you thinking? Nice cold beer might fix it, do you think?
Oh, I don't know. We'll see how we go.
No, see how you go. All right, everybody. That's the end of this week's podcast, episode 204. We'll look forward to catching up with you next week. And the book, remember, going out to Maggie Vu. So we'll catch you soon.
Bye.